The neon lights on the main strip have never burned brighter, projecting a facade of record-breaking profits and endless luxury. But just 5 miles east, the lights flicker with a different, more desperate frequency. While the corporations pop champagne over billion-dollar quarters, there is a silent crisis unfolding on the Boulder Strip, the forgotten underbelly of Sin City. It feels as though time stopped here in 1989, not out of nostalgia, but out of neglect.
We are looking at a tale of two cities, one designed to extract wealth from tourists, and another that is slowly being erased by the very economy it helped build. Today, we dig into the numbers to understand why this legendary stretch of asphalt has become America's scariest street.
Talk to anyone who has lived in Vegas for more than 20 years, and you'll hear the same heavy sigh. Driving down the Boulder Highway today doesn't feel like a trip down memory lane. It feels like walking through a graveyard of the middle class. There is a collective sentiment among the locals. Let's call it the local fatigue. It's the sinking feeling you get seeing the spaces that used to be community hubs turned into hollow shells or weekly rentals. The vibe isn't just old, it is exhausted. To the long-time resident, this isn't just urban decay, it is a betrayal of the promise that Las Vegas was a place where a normal person could still win. Stick with me as we analyze 7 distinct economic fractures that are tearing this community apart. We aren't just looking at cracked sidewalks, we are dissecting a phenomenon I call economic apartheid. We will examine the fortress business model that keeps places like Sam's Town alive while the neighborhood around it crumbles. And we will calculate the crime tax that makes new investment mathematically impossible. Later, we will look at the specific demographic data that suggests this entire area is sitting on a time bomb that no amount of renovation can diffuse. Part 1. The Tale of Two Strips. To understand the decay, we first have to acknowledge the divide. Las Vegas has effectively split into 2 distinct economic ecosystems that no longer speak to each other. On one side, you have the Strip, a global powerhouse generating billions in gaming revenue and charging $30 for a cocktail. It is polished, corporate, and ruthlessly efficient. On the other side, you have the Boulder Strip. If you drive from the Bellagio to Boulder Highway, you aren't just changing zip codes. You are crossing an invisible economic border. The scenery shifts rapidly from luxury high-rises to weekly motels and vacant lots. The data paints a stark picture of what I call economic apartheid. While capital investment flows like water into the resort corridor, renovating rooms, building spheres, and repaving roads, the Boulder Strip has been left to desiccate. We are seeing a deliberate allocation of resources where the tourist zone is hyper-maintained and the local zone is managed for decline. Prices here haven't skyrocketed like they have on the main strip, but neither has the quality of life. Instead of development, we see stagnation. The motels that once housed road-tripping families are now often used as last resort housing for those priced out of the city's aggressive rental market. City planners might argue that this is simply the free market at work, that investment goes where the highest returns are. They will tell you that the main strip draws international money, while Boulder serves a different, less lucrative demographic. There is a grain of truth to that, but it ignores the structural neglect. When a city focuses entirely on its export product, the tourists, it often cannibalizes the infrastructure meant for its own citizens. The Boulder Strip is the collateral damage of a city that pivoted entirely to catering to the ultra-wealthy, leaving the working-class bedrock to fend for itself in an environment that feels less like a neighborhood and more like a survival scenario. Part 2. Sam's Town, the fortress. Amidst this landscape of decline stands a massive anomaly. Sam's Town. When it opened its doors in 1979, it was a gamble that defined a generation. It was the first true locals casino, built on the idea that the people who work in Vegas deserved a place of their own, away from the tourists. For decades, it was the heartbeat of the Boulder Strip, a place where the buffet was affordable and the atmosphere was friendly. Today, however, Sam's Town operates less like a community hub and more like a fortress. Stepping inside is a jarring experience because it is immaculately preserved. The atrium is still lush, the machines are singing, and the air conditioning is cold. But step outside the sliding glass doors, and the contrast is immediate and violent. You are instantly confronted with a surrounding area that has largely collapsed. The business model has shifted from being the center of a thriving district to becoming a self-contained ecosystem that protects its customers from the neighborhood it resides in. The corporate perspective is that Sam's Town is a resilient legacy asset, maintaining profitability by serving a loyal, albeit aging, customer base. They have optimized their operations to retain the old Vegas feel that their core demographic craves. But the ugly truth is that its success highlights the failure of everything around it. It survives not by integrating with the modern Boulder Strip, but by insulating against it. It captures the local dollars of retirees who drive in, park in the secure garage, spend their day inside, and then drive home, never interacting with the businesses on the street. It is a solitary lung, breathing in an area that is slowly suffocating. Part 3. The crime tax. Economics. We need to talk about the cost of doing business here, and I don't mean taxes or utilities. I am talking about the crime tax. Boulder Highway has developed a reputation that is statistically difficult to ignore. It is frequently cited as one of the most dangerous stretches of road for pedestrians in the entire state of Nevada. But beyond the tragic traffic statistics, there is a pervasive layer of property crime and vagrancy that imposes a heavy financial penalty on the area. This tax is invisible on a balance sheet, but it dictates every investment decision. When a developer looks at a plot of land here, they don't just calculate the cost of construction. They have to factor in the cost of security, the risk of vandalism, and the higher insurance premiums. This depresses property values significantly compared to the city average. You can buy land cheap here, but the operational costs to secure it are astronomical. This creates a vicious cycle. Legitimate businesses stay away because the risk premium is too high, which leaves the storefronts empty or fills them with predatory businesses like payday lenders and liquor stores, which in turn keeps the risk perception high. Officials will point to new police initiatives or lighting projects as evidence that they are tackling the problem. They frame it as a challenge of urban management. However, for the small business owner or the potential investor, these measures are often too little, too late. The market has already priced in the danger. The reality is that capital is cowardly. It flees from uncertainty. As long as the crime tax remains high, the Boulder Strip cannot attract the kind of organic growth that revitalizes a neighborhood. It remains trapped in a state of suspended animation, too risky for major capital and too expensive for the small entrepreneur to fix on their own. Part 4. The gentrification trap. One might ask, if the land is cheap, why isn't it being bought up and improved? We see attempts at this, most notably with master-planned communities like Cadence springing up nearby. This is what economists call gentrification, the theoretical savior of run-down districts. On paper, building modern homes should lift the property values of the surrounding area. However, on the Boulder Strip, we are witnessing a phenomenon I call the gentrification trap. The reality on the ground is a jarring disconnect. You have brand new mid-range family homes being constructed just a stone's throw away from dilapidated weekly motels and addiction recovery clinics. You can build a beautiful house, but you cannot easily engineer a new neighborhood culture overnight. The proximity to deep-seated urban decay creates a ceiling on how much these new properties can appreciate. Families moving into these new developments often find themselves living on an island, driving through the decay to get to their safe havens rather than integrating with it. Developers argue that they are pioneering a new future for the area, betting that the good will eventually displace the bad. But history and common sense suggest otherwise. When you drop a high-value asset into a low-value, high-crime zone without addressing the root causes of the decay, you don't get revitalization, you get friction. The existing businesses, the liquor stores, the motels, are entrenched. They serve a demand that isn't going away just because a few nice houses were built down the road. This mismatch creates a community that is permanently fractured, where the new residents resent the old reality, and the old reality has no place in the new vision. Part 5. Infrastructure barrier. There is an even deeper, less visible reason why the Boulder Strip remains frozen in time. The infrastructure barrier. It's not just about what you see above ground, it's about what lies beneath. Revitalizing an old corridor like this isn't as simple as knocking down a building and putting up a sweet green. The area suffers from aging utility systems, sewage, power grids, and crucially, water rights that date back nearly half a century. The cost to modernize this infrastructure is the hidden killer of deals. If a developer wants to tear down an old motel and build a modern apartment complex, they are often hit with impact fees and upgrade costs that shatter their profit margins. According to industry whispers and construction forums, the cost to bring some of these lots up to modern code can rival the cost of the land itself. You are essentially paying double, once for the dirt and once to fix the mistakes of the 1970s. This acts as a massive financial blockade. It explains why we see so many lipstick-on-a-pig renovations rather than true redevelopment. It is simply cheaper for a slumlord to slap a fresh coat of paint on a crumbling motel than it is for a visionary developer to build something new. The infrastructure effectively locks the land use in the past. Until the city or state steps in to subsidize these massive structural costs, the economics of improvement will never pencil out. The decay is literally built into the pipes. Part 6. The demographic time bomb. If the physical decay wasn't enough, there is a demographic time bomb ticking away in the background. The Boulder Strip, and the casinos that anchor it, rely heavily on a specific customer, the baby boomer generation. These are the folks who remember the Vegas of the 80s and 90s, who appreciate a good deal, and who treat slot machines as a form of social recreation. But time is undefeated. As this generation ages out of the market, there is no one standing in line to replace them. The younger demographics, millennials and Gen Z, interact with the economy differently. They don't typically spend their Friday night sitting at a video poker bar. They are on their phones, they are gaming online, or they are seeking experiences on the main strip or in the arts district. They are not driving to Boulder Highway for a cheap buffet and a pull on a slot machine. This generational shift is an existential threat to the entire business ecosystem of the area. We are looking at a customer base that is shrinking by the day, with zero organic replacement. It creates a scenario where businesses are fighting over a smaller and smaller pie. When the current regulars are gone, who is this infrastructure for? The silence you hear in some of these older casinos isn't just a quiet Tuesday. It's the sound of a business model slowly expiring along with its patrons. Part 7. The Canary Warning. Finally, we must ask, why should you care if you don't live on Boulder Highway? Because this strip is the canary in the coal mine for the rest of Las Vegas. The economic diseases killing this area, aggressive inflation, the rising cost of living, the aging population, and the depletion of resources do not respect zip codes. They are systemic issues that are coming for the whole city.
What we are seeing here is the first stage of a cycle that could eventually reach the mega resorts. If the local economy hollows out, if the service workers can't afford to live here, and if the infrastructure costs become too high to maintain, the glitter of the main strip will eventually tarnish too. The Boulder Strip is showing us what happens when an area runs out of economic momentum. It is a warning that growth is not infinite, and that neglect has a compound interest rate that eventually becomes impossible to pay.
So, is there any hope? Or is this simply a eulogy for a dying district? History teaches us that markets are cyclical. Nothing goes up forever, and conversely, nothing stays down forever. But the correction can be painful. What we are witnessing on the Boulder Strip is a brutal but necessary market correction. The inflated values of the past are colliding with the reality of the present.
Eventually, prices, whether for land or labor, will have to align with what the market can actually bear. If the fortress casinos can't attract young people, they will close, and that land will eventually become cheap enough for something entirely new to take root. It might not be a casino. It might be affordable housing, industrial parks, or something we haven't imagined yet. The death of the local Vegas we knew is simply the shedding of a skin that no longer fits.
It is tragic for those holding on to the past, but it is the only way the future can eventually arrive. The best thing we can do is look at the situation with clear eyes, refuse to buy into the hype, and protect our own resources until the dust settles. I want to hear from you. Do you think the Boulder Strip can be saved? Or should the city let it fade away into history? Have you noticed this economic apartheid in your own city? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you appreciate this kind of unfiltered deep dive into the dark side of economics, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It tells the algorithm that you value the truth over the hype. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.